Chapter 1. Josephine Smith sat quietly by the fire. She was on her way to meet her future husband, Jack Blake, and it was the last night before they arrived in the small Alaskan frontier town of Yeti. Yeti was home to Jack, and all of her companions' future husbands. After working for many years in a hotel restaurant, she'd followed the lead of some of her friends and decided to be a mail-order bride. Her best friend, Myrtle, was on a walk with her new husband, but she sat with two other women who were on their way to Yeti as well. Lula and Ella had both worked in the hotel with them, and they were to marry men from Yeti. It was strange to think that at this time tomorrow, she'd be married. While her friends spoke to one another, her mind was far away. Had she made a terrible mistake agreeing to marry a stranger? She knew little about Jack. He was a logger in Yeti, Alaska, who had moved there from Seattle, where he'd been a logger as well. They'd written a few letters back and forth, but for the life of her, she couldn't remember why she'd decided to marry the man. What if he was cruel? Growing up, Josie had watched her mother receive daily scoldings and beatings from her stepfather. She'd begged her mother to leave, but her mother had simply said she wouldn't be able to raise her children without his earnings. Josie had argued that she couldn't raise her children if she were dead, but her mother had stubbornly refused to leave. As soon as Josie was 16, she'd found a job at the hotel in Beckham and had never looked back. Even though she hated the job, it was better than watching her mother hurt every single day. Josie sat staring into the fire, wishing she knew what her future held when they reached Yeti. Jack had seemed kind in his letters, but that didn't mean he was a good man. In the back of her mind, she knew she could go back to the hotel to work if she needed to, but her closest friends were in Yeti now, not back in Massachusetts. No, she would have to make the marriage work, no matter what it took. "Josie?" Lula asked. "A penny for your thoughts." Josie smiled. "They're not worth nearly that much. Just wondering about Jack and what marriage will be like." Lula reached over and squeezed Josie's hand. "I'm certain we're all going to love living in Yeti and live happily ever after." "We have to." Ella nodded emphatically. She and Lula were extremely close, and Lula usually spoke for both of them. Josie wondered how Ella was going to do on her own with a new husband. Hopefully, Ella's future husband would know how to get her to talk. Aaron and Myrtle returned to the fire then. "We've got a hard day's walk ahead of us tomorrow," Aaron said. "It's time we all went to bed." Josie immediately got to her feet, "And tomorrow will most likely be our wedding day." "Very true," Myrtle said, smiling. "I hope you're marrying a man as good as Aaron." Myrtle was the only one of the group who knew about Josie's childhood. Josie wished she could have just a few minutes alone with her friend to express her worries about her upcoming marriage. She'd find a way to walk alone with her the following day. She needed Myrtle to talk her out of turning tail and running. Josie woke before the others the following day. They'd all been sleeping in their clothes on the trail, but she took the opportunity to walk down to the river and wash herself. She didn't dare strip completely, so it was a quick task, and when she returned to camp, the others were awake. Myrtle gave Josie her morning rations. There was no way Josie would call the hardtack and jerky they ate for every meal food, so rations it was. "We'll be there today, right?" Lula asked. "Unless something unforeseen happens, we should be there by late afternoon. I'll introduce you all to the men you've promised to marry. I'm sure someone let Mr. Johnson, our pastor, know that you'd be arriving soon. I hope he can officiate marriages today, but I have fulfilled my obligation to you all once we reach Yeti." Aaron's eyes settled on Myrtle. The way Aaron was always watching his wife warmed Josie's heart. Their marriage hadn't started out well by any standards, but they seemed to have grown closer. They packed up their things one last time before heading out on the trail, along the Tozitsna River, which Aaron had assured them went through Yeti. They'd traveled along the Yukon until the spot where the two rivers met, and now they were saying goodbye to the Yukon River. Josie was glad. She wasn't certain she could have endured another day in a rowboat. As they walked, Josie walked a little slower than the others, hoping that Myrtle would fall into step beside her. It didn't take long for Myrtle to notice she was behind the others, and she slowed. "Are you doing all right?" Josie shrugged. "I'm nervous." I worry that the man I'm heading to marry will be just like my stepfather. You need to stay optimistic. Aaron certainly is nothing like your stepfather. Hopefully, none of the men we're going to meet are like him. Some men are good people. Myrtle put her arm around Josie's shoulders and squeezed. I hope you're right. I am. You'll see. Josie couldn't help but smile at Myrtle's optimism. And we get to see our friends tomorrow. Myrtle smiled. Belle and Maggie already have babies from what I understand. And there are business opportunities for us if we're brave enough to take them on. I'm certain Belle and the others already have job ideas for us. It sounds like they're all changing the town a little more every day. We can help change it too, Josie said, her mind still on her future husband. She prayed he would be kind. True to his word, Aaron led them all into the tiny settlement of Yeti in the late afternoon. Josie had heard it called a town, but looking around her, she realized that whomever called it that was being very optimistic. There was a general store, and not much else. Aaron had explained that a Bible study was held every Sunday, but there wasn't even a real church. Aaron led them to the general store. Mrs. Johnson, these ladies are here to marry 3 of the loggers. Could I leave them with you to get cleaned up, while I fetch their future husbands? Mrs. Johnson smiled. That would be fine. And I'll let Mr. Johnson know he needs to put on his pastor hat and get them all married this evening. After Aaron left, Lula was the first to talk to Mrs. Johnson. Belle and the others have all sent us wonderful letters about how helpful you've been. Mrs. Johnson nodded. I was the lone woman in this town for far too long. I'm quite pleased that more women are moving in. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. We can't wait to meet with our friends and all start working like the others. Lula smiled. It sounds like there are a great many things we can do to contribute around here. Josie wished Myrtle had stayed with them, but Aaron had taken her with him when he'd left. She really would feel more comfortable with her best friend beside her. Please, call me Katie. All of the others do. And excuse me a moment. I need to let Mr. Johnson know about the weddings. Katie left her post behind the counter and hurried up a staircase. Josie realized the older woman and her husband lived above their store. It would be nice to not have to go outside in the brutal cold she'd heard was normal in Alaska. While Katie was gone, Josie browsed the store. There were only 2 or 3 hats for sale. And she didn't see any gloves. It might be good for her to knit some. It would be a way for her to contribute to the community. And after spending months with people surrounding her, spending some time alone working on simple projects like those sounded wonderful. When Katie came back down, she smiled at the women gathered. As soon as Aaron returns with your future husbands, Mr. Johnson will perform the ceremony. Or ceremonies. Do you all want one big ceremony? Or should he do them separately? Josie hadn't considered the possibility of sharing a wedding ceremony with her friends. She looked toward them, but Lula answered. I think we'd all prefer to have separate weddings if it's not too much trouble. Josie disagreed, and she opened her mouth to give her opinion, but the words stuck in her throat. She'd grown more and more nervous as they'd gotten closer to Yeti. At that moment, she had no desire to ever speak again. Oh, how she wished she knew something more about Jack than what he'd written in his letters. It was another 15 minutes before one of the men arrived. He stepped into the store and said, I'm Jack. Josie looked him up and down and realized he was an attractive man. He was a little unkempt, but he had obviously come straight from work. I'm Josie, she said softly. Jack walked to her side. It's good to finally meet you. He reached for her hand, and she fought the impulse to pull away. They were going to be married in just minutes. She had to let him touch her. How was your journey? It was long. And if I never have to eat hardtack again, I'll be a happy woman. He laughed. If you can cook, then I'll never ask you to eat it again. I'm not a great cook, she said. But my friend Myrtle is, and I hope she'll give me lessons. I'm sure you have other qualities that more than make up for your lack of skill in cooking. Jack was a bit disappointed because all the other men who had married brides from Massachusetts had gotten good cooks, but he was used to hardtack and jerky for every meal. He'd be satisfied with whatever she made. Katie hurried over to them. Are you two ready to marry? Mr. Johnson is ready. Jack smiled, offering his arm to Josie. She hesitated for just a moment before taking it. Let's get married, she said, though she felt like she was marching toward a guillotine. The ceremony was quick, and at the end of it, Jack kissed her softly. Come with me. I'll show you to our house and help you get settled in. Josie followed him, more nervous than she'd been. He seemed so kind, but her stepfather had a reputation for being a good man. It was just, when he was alone with his family, that he got violent. She walked to the entrance of the store where all of their belongings had been placed and reached for her carpet bag. To her surprise, Jack picked up the bag for her. Is this everything? He asked. Yes, I didn't have much. And she'd sold most of what she had. It was easier to travel with fewer belongings, and she could always sew a new dress if she needed to. Jack stepped out into the chilly September air. It'll be dark soon, he said. Let's get to my cabin before we can't see. Not for the first time that day, Josie wondered what would happen if she started running, but she knew she wouldn't. She'd given her word she would marry this man, and she had promised to love and obey him, though the word obey rankled a bit. The walk to his cabin was short, and they didn't speak on the way. She knew she'd eventually have to be comfortable with the man, but she had no idea how to make that happen. He opened the door to his home. I have a stove that's never been used. I know the cabin could use a good cleaning, but I haven't had time. I've been picking up all the extra hours I can to make your transition to life in Alaska easier. I'm a much better housekeeper than I am a cook, she said softly. He smiled. Glad to hear it. The cabin was small. Just one room. There was an area with a stove, and a work table that looked like it would be easy to use. The bed was in the opposite corner. It looked even smaller than the bed she'd shared with her sister growing up. She had no idea how she was going to share such a small bed, but she didn't let herself dwell on it. There's a well in the back. I don't have any animals. Do you plan to go into business with your friends? He asked. Josie shrugged. That is my plan if you don't mind. He looked at her for a moment. Of course, I don't mind. Why would I? Josie didn't tell him about the job her mother had taken so she could have some money of her own, and how her stepfather had reacted. After he'd broken her mother's arm, she hadn't been able to work, and that's how he liked it. I just want to be sure. I don't want to upset you on our first day as a married couple. He chuckled softly. I'm an easygoing man. You'd have to work at angering me. I'm going to try not to put that statement to the test, she replied. She walked to the dresser beside the bed. She put her carpet bag atop it and looked in the drawers, wondering if there would be room for her clothes. The drawers were completely empty. Is this not where you keep your clothes? He rubbed the back of his neck in embarrassment. Nothing I own is clean. She smiled. I'll take care of that tomorrow. I'll even wash all the bedding as well. Don't worry. This house will be shipshape in no time. I like that idea. I've never been very good at cleaning or laundry. You won't have to be, she said, immediately putting her clothes with his into a basket she found in the corner. Is there anything else you need me to do tomorrow? Just settle in. Don't wear yourself out. You have years and years to get the house cleaned. She smiled at that. I'll do my best. We're all planning on meeting up with the ladies who are already here at the store tomorrow. I'm sure we'll decide who does what job then. He walked to her, and grasped her shoulders, pulling her to him. I have a feeling I'm going to like having a wife. Thanks for traveling all this way to marry me. He pressed his lips against hers. She froze, worried that he would expect her to consummate the marriage that night. She would if that's what he wanted, but she would prefer to get over her fear of him first. When he straightened, he said, Let's put off our wedding night until we get to know each other a little better. You don't mind? Josie asked, surprised at his kindness. Not at all. I want our marriage to last all of our lives, so I want to do things right. Getting to know you first seems like the smart way to do that. Jack caressed her cheek with the back of his index finger. You just have to let me kiss you on occasion. She smiled. I think I can do that. Chapter 2. To Josie's surprise, she woke the following morning with the top half of her on Jack. It was not something she'd imagined could happen. She'd started the night so close to the opposite side of the bed from him that she had been afraid of falling off. She quickly got out of bed and pulled her nightgown, which had somehow ended up around her waist, down. Once she'd finished blushing, she hurried to the kitchen to see what he had on hand that she would be able to cook. The cabinets were bare. Not one sign of food. Did he think she could cook without any ingredients? Myrtle probably could, but she didn't have the kitchen abilities of her friend. She heard footsteps coming up behind her. Good morning, Jack. His arms came around her from behind, settling at her waist. I didn't think you'd be here quite this soon. I only have hardtack and jerky, and a bit of coffee. Well, there's not much I can do with that. I'll make coffee. He opened a trapdoor in the floor and walked down into what she could only assume was the cellar. When he returned, he had exactly what she'd promised herself she would never eat again. Her stomach rolled just thinking about it. This will work for this morning. You're going to meet up with friends this morning, right? She nodded. And I'll do some shopping if you don't mind. I don't mind at all. I have an account at the store. Just put whatever you think we need on the account. She turned to look at him. Are you certain? I do have some money. I've been working overtime so I could provide what was needed when you arrived. I will provide. She frowned. I do plan to work with my friends. Will that be a problem? Jack shook his head. Of course not, you just don't need to finance it with your own money. Unless you plan to open your own store of something, I can afford to help you. Josie pursed her lips, thinking about it. It would help to start out with his money, depending on what she planned to do. But she had no idea what that was. Thank you, she finally said, but in her mind, she vowed she wouldn't spend his money on more than the necessities. You're my wife. It's my job to provide. She nodded. All right. She served the coffee and put some of the jerky and hardtack on a plate, carried it to the table, and set it down. We need 2 plates, he said, reaching up into the cupboard for another. I'm not hungry this morning, she fibbed. His eyes narrowed, but he wasn't going to force-feed her. I don't like the idea of you going hungry. I cannot eat another meal of jerky and hardtack. The mere thought of it makes my stomach churn. All right. Make sure you grab food you'll eat from the store. She nodded, thankful he wasn't pushing the issue. I will. What are your favorite foods? I'll eat just about anything, he said. In the winter I really like soups and stews. In the summer, I'm happy with sandwiches. I won't be difficult to feed, Jack promised. Glad to hear it. It's going to take a little while for me to learn how to cook better. I'm not a bad baker, though I don't enjoy it. I think my friend Myrtle is going to ask to be the baker for all of us, though. She can bake anything. I've seen her throw random ingredients onto a pie crust, and the result was wonderful. Make sure you get her to bake bread every day for us, and if she could make an occasional dessert, I'd be very happy. I'll talk to her then. I'll see her in an hour or 2 at the store. Though I think I'll head to town and do my shopping before we meet up with the others. Sounds good. He finished his food and pushed his plate away. I'm heading to work. Don't expect me before dark. She nodded. I'll expect you when I see you. He leaned down to kiss her goodbye, and she couldn't help flinching away. Despite sleeping in his arms the night before, she was still very afraid. Hopefully, she would get over it soon, but she wasn't certain that was possible. He had a hurt look on his face when he stood after kissing her on the cheek. I would never hurt you, Josie. I'll try to keep that in mind. As soon as he was gone, she put water on to boil and hauled the tin tub that was hanging on the outside of the house in. She was going to take a bath if it killed her. While she waited for the water to heat up, she swept the floor and pulled the sheets and quilt off the bed. She had to get laundry done, as well as meet with her friends. It would be a busy day. After her bath, she dumped the water out and walked into town. She wasn't certain what time the store opened, but she planned to be there when it did. Seeing that the store was open when she arrived, she looked over the shelves, trying to decide what to buy. When she took potatoes from the shelf, Katie walked up behind her. Your friends will be sharing the food they've worked for all summer if you plan on working with them. I think you should wait on produce and meat. Just pick up essentials like flour, sugar, and coffee. Josie turned, a bit startled that someone was so close behind her. Absolutely. Thank you so much for the advice. I just wanted to start getting the cabin organized before I met with the others. I'm sure it'll be fine to get a few essentials then. She stacked sugar, flour, coffee, salt, baking powder, yeast cakes, rice, oatmeal, and cornmeal onto the counter. Do you have a pattern for making boots for the winter? I noticed my husband's are worn through. I can get you a mukluk pattern. That's what most of the men wear here. You'll use animal hide and fur. Most people use rabbit fur in this area. That would be wonderful. Josie said. She'd never made boots or any sort of shoe, but she could learn, and she knew her efforts would be appreciated. Jack seemed like a kind man. She hoped his kindness was truthful and not a facade. Katie hurried away and came back with 3 things. First, she gave Josie the pattern for the boots. You're going to need these as well, Katie said, adding navy beans and tea to her pile. Oh, this is perfect. Do you have a book of receipts? I'm not much of a cook. Katie pulled a book out from under the counter. This is a very basic cookbook put together by a homestead wife in Tanana. I think it will be very useful. I bought a copy myself, and I've made several things from it. Oh, thank you. Josie took out some cash to pay, even though Jack had told her not to. It didn't seem fair that he had to pay for everything. Katie shook her head. I'll start an account for you. I know Mr. Blake has one, but most of your friends have started their own accounts, and they pay for everything with it. Then when I sell something for you, I'll be able to add it to your account. That sounds wonderful if it's not too much work for you. It's not. I'm just going to treat you the exact same way I treat the other ladies. That sounds good. Thank you so much, Mrs. Johnson. Katie. Please, call me Katie. All right, Katie. Would you like me to have Mr. Johnson deliver this to your cabin? Katie asked. It would be difficult to carry it all. That would be wonderful if you really don't mind. It's good for him to get out and do some physical work. With more people coming, he's spending more and more time working on what he's going to teach on Sundays. Katie shook her head. We can't let him go soft. Josie laughed. No, we can't. When will it be delivered? She asked, picking up the pattern and cookbook from the stack. She wanted to learn as much as possible as quickly as she could. Of course, that day would be spent with her friends and cleaning her new home. But after that? She wanted to have the cookbook for her rest times. This afternoon. Will you be home? I'm not sure. I can have Mr. Johnson put everything on your table if that will help you. That would be wonderful. Josie left the store with a smile on her face. She wasn't certain what it would be, but she knew she'd find her niche soon. When she arrived home, she immediately went to work, carrying buckets of water inside to do the laundry. She should have done it as soon as Jack left for work, but she felt accomplished with what she'd done. Watching the time slowed down her progress a bit, but by the time she needed to walk to the store to meet her friends, she had the laundry on the line. As soon as she hung up the last shirt, she hurried to town. She couldn't wait to see friends she hadn't seen in months, and a year in some cases. When she reached the store, she spotted Myrtle speaking with Belle, Maggie, Agnes, and Sally. As she walked up behind Agnes, she heard her ask, I heard something about a surprise? She tapped Agnes on the shoulder. Are you my surprise? Agnes asked, embracing her. Well, her and me too, Lula said. And me, Ella said. 4 of you came together? Belle asked, embracing each of them in turn. We did. We probably shouldn't have, but we did. Josie grinned. I can't wait to find out what you need me to do. There are always options, Belle said. We'll go over them when we get to Maggie's for lunch. Josie took the baby Belle was holding. Oh, he's a handsome boy. Belle smiled. He gets that from his father. Soon after, they all walked to Maggie's cabin. Belle waited until they were all seated before explaining exactly how their little operation worked. It was quickly decided that Lula would join Belle every morning hunting. When Sally asked if anyone was available to forage with her, Josie volunteered for the task. You'll need to tell me what to do. Sally smiled. I can be bossy when I need to be. Maggie served a meal that had nothing to do with hardtack or jerky, so Josie was thrilled. She shouldn't have skipped breakfast that morning, but she really didn't think she could choke down more hardtack. As soon as they were finished eating, Maggie took Belle's son and shooed them all out the door. Get us some more meat. Maggie called after Belle and Lula. Sally looked at Josie. Let's go do this. Maggie's a better forager than I am, but I've learned a lot in the past few weeks. We'll be able to find Eskimo potatoes and there are still some berries. Today, we're looking for onions, Eskimo potatoes, blueberries, low bush cranberries, highland cranberries, and crowberries. Sally handed Josie a basket. We want to find as many as we can. What we're foraging for now will need to last through the winter for all 8 couples. Plus, it's nice to have some to make into pie filling and jam to sell at the store. Do you bake? Josie shook her head. I'm useless in the kitchen. I mean, I can clean one like no one else, but actually cooking or baking are beyond me. I bought a book of receipts from Katie today. I hope it helps me. I'm sure once we've finished our foraging, you can get cooking lessons from any one of us. I'd love to teach you if you would like. Thank you. I think I would like to learn to bake from Myrtle because she's incredible, but I'll learn anything that any of you are willing to teach me. Let's concentrate on finding food first, Sally said with a smile. They had reached a clearing, and Josie already saw berries to be picked. The berries are easy to spot. Sally squatted down, touching a fern-like plant with yellow leaves. There were several brown pods hanging from it, making Josie think of peas. These are Eskimo potatoes. At least that's what they're called. They're not really potatoes at all. Sally removed one of the pods and opened it, showing Josie what was inside. This is the part that's edible. So, there are no real potatoes? Josie asked. She would miss them. Only the ones I grew in my garden. I grew a lot of potatoes. I'll have Tom bring over a big bag for you later. Sally smiled. I love to garden, so that's become my special skill to help our group. Do you have any idea what yours will be? Josie shook her head. No, not really. I can knit and sew, but I'm not sure if I want to do just those things. I mean, in winter, I think it would be practical, but I want to be able to help with food somehow. Just probably not cooking it. Sally smiled. I prefer gardening to cooking. We could certainly use another gardener. Josie nodded. I'll think about it. I'm not sure it's what I want long-term though. You have plenty of time to figure it out. Sally stood and pointed to another plant. This is a wild onion. The Eskimo potatoes and the onions are real food, and we should focus on those first. Then we'll pick berries after. Do you think you can identify the potatoes and onions? I think I can. They spent 2 full hours foraging before it started to get too dark to continue. Sally finally said, It's getting too dark to continue. And it's probably time to start supper for our men. Josie groaned. I hope I can figure something out. You'll be able to. Let's head to my place. We need to divide our forage into 8 equal parts. Will Belle and Lula do the same with whatever meat they get? We share everything equally. Whatever is left, we sell to the store. Katie even buys some of it from us. She's so happy to have other women in town. Josie smiled as she followed Sally to her cabin. I think I'm going to like it here. Chapter 3. After finishing at Sally's, Josie rushed home to finish her chores for the day. She knew she needed to have a hot supper on the table if she didn't want to make Jack angry. Thankfully, someone had dropped by and left meat, though she was unsure what kind it was, and potatoes on the table. She decided to do something she'd seen her mother do a dozen times. She chopped up the meat into bite-sized pieces and dropped them into a pot. After browning the meat, which she thought was venison, she added water as well as onions and potatoes. Hopefully it would turn into a stew. If not, it would be a soup. At least Jack had said he wasn't picky. While the soup, or stew, simmered on the stove, she took the clothes off the line and carried them in, folding them on the table and putting them away. She was glad that all of Jack's clothes were dirty because that meant she could arrange the drawers in a way that suited her. She found a bucket and a scrub brush, and after sweeping the floors, she mopped them carefully. She knew better than to leave a speck of dirt anywhere. She'd seen how her mother had been treated when she'd made cleaning mistakes. Actually, the reason she was such a good housekeeper was because she would go behind her mother and make sure everything was perfect. Her mother would be beaten for something else most evenings, but at least Josie helped as much as she could. As soon as she was finished scrubbing the floor, she checked on the soup. Taking one small taste, she made a face. It was terribly bland. She quickly added salt to the soup and mixed together some flour and water to thicken the whole mess. She had no idea if it would work, but it was worth trying. While the pot continued to simmer, she pulled out the pattern for making mucklucks. There were several sizes on the pattern, and she decided she would use the size closest to his current boot size. Jack opened the door a few minutes earlier than she'd expected, and he sniffed. "Something smells good. I hope it is good. I don't even know what kind of meat I used, but I did my best." He hung his jacket on a hook and looked around. "You've done a lot today. Did you work out what you wanted to do with your friends?" "Not yet. I'm foraging until there's no forage left, and then I'll figure something else out. I may knit or sew, or something like that." She put away the pattern she'd been looking at and served them each a bowl of whatever it was she'd made. She really didn't know if it was a soup or a stew, or just some mess, but she'd made an effort. Putting the meal on the table, she asked, "Coffee? Milk? Water?" "Coffee would be nice," he said. She had a pot on the stove, just in case that had been his answer. She quickly poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down. He said a quick prayer, and then they each took tentative bites of the food. Josie was surprised that it wasn't horrible. It was edible, and that seemed to be all he cared about. She had gone a little overboard on the salt. She'd be more careful next time. "This is good," Jack said. "I thought you said you couldn't cook." "I can't. I just threw things into the pot and prayed it would be edible. I don't even know if I should call it a soup or a stew." He grinned. "I call it tasty." She grinned. "My friend Myrtle will be baking bread for us every day and a dessert every other day. That will make things much easier. I won't argue with that at all." "It looks like you had a busy day." She nodded. "I did. I'm not one to sit with idle hands if I can help it. I couldn't have cleaned the house this well if I'd had a month to do it." "I'm impressed." Jack could feel that she was nervous around him, and he'd decided at work that day to look for ways to compliment her to help her feel more at ease. "Tell me about your childhood." She smiled, her gaze distant. "My father died when I was 2. My mother remarried almost immediately, and I was raised by my mother and stepfather. He was a wealthy man." "Did you go to school?" he asked. "Oh, yes. My mother went on to have 4 more children with my stepfather. I have a sister, Stella, who is 3 years younger than me. We shared a room until I moved out to work at the hotel." "Why didn't you stay home?" Josie shook her head. "Enough about me. How was work today?" He frowned. There was something she was hiding, but he felt it was too soon to push for answers. "It was good. I traded all my sawmill days for logging days with Aaron. He brought you all, and I think it's only fair. I'm not sure if the other men will do the same, but I hope so." "Do you prefer sawmill or logging?" she asked. "Logging. And Aaron prefers sawmill." It gets cold in the winter, but it'll be fine. That reminds me, she said. I need you to let me measure your boots later. I'm making you some mukluks, and I want to be sure I get the size right. His eyes widened. You're making me shoes? She nodded. I don't want your toes to freeze off. I noticed your boots have a few holes. You could make mukluks for the store as well, if you enjoy it. Most of the men wear their boots much longer than they should. We'll see how I like it before I commit, she said with a smile. Good idea. He pushed his bowl away. I can't eat another bite, but it was good. There's enough left that I could put it in a jar for your lunch tomorrow. I would like that a lot. Consider it done. She stood and cleared the table, getting the dishes done right away. He sat and watched her work. She was a skittish little thing, but when she got used to being married to him, he was sure she'd make a good wife. When she'd finished the dishes, she went back to the table and asked him to remove one of his boots. She put the pattern on the table and compared sizes. I know which size to make. Would you mind if I started working on it now? Or would you like me to wait until tomorrow? Which would you prefer? He asked. I don't mind either way. She looked at him skeptically for a moment. Are you certain? My stepfather hated it if mother did chores when he was around. He thought she should give him her full attention. Jack blinked a few times. No wonder she was nervous. I don't mind either way. If you need the time tomorrow to work on other things, get started tonight. I'm excited to have new boots that I won't have to pay for. The cost of everything here is so high because everything has to be shipped in. I can't start tonight. She laughed softly. I need to get some deer hide from Belle before I start a project like this. He smiled. That's fine. She stood and put the pattern with the right size marked on it in a basket on the floor. Then she reached for her knitting needles. I thought I'd make you matching gloves, scarf, and hat for the winter. I'd love that, but you don't have to make everything for me. You can make some things for yourself instead. You'll work outside more than I will, so you need warm clothes sooner. Josie was surprised he'd mentioned her at all. Didn't he realize that she needed to cater to him as his wife? He'd obviously been raised very differently than she had. I suppose that's fair. What were your parents like? She asked. My family was odd compared to other families around us. We lived in Seattle, and my mother worked as a lawyer. My father did all the cooking and cleaning. He couldn't see well, and it made sense for my mother to work. People all thought we were strange, but I felt it was perfectly normal. I've never heard of a woman lawyer. Or a man who took care of his home and children. How very strange. Josie loved the idea. The woman would suddenly have some power in the relationship and not be expected to do whatever her husband said. I thought all lawyers were women for a long time, he said. When I met a male lawyer, I thought there was something wrong with him. It wasn't until I was older that I realized just how different my family was. I would love to meet your parents someday. My mother would love you, he said. You're trying to build a business with your friends. She'd respect that. My father would too, but mother would be a lot more vocal about it. She's a suffragette. And that doesn't bother you? Josie asked, shocked at the mere idea of a woman being a suffragette. Sure, she'd read about them, but she didn't personally know anyone who was acquainted with a suffragette. Why should it? I believe a woman can do almost any job a man can. Almost? Jack smiled. I think a woman would have a hard time doing what I do. The labor is very physical, and most women aren't tall and strong enough. Josie nodded. I'm not nearly strong enough. But look what you did with the cabin today. You have strengths that I don't. I never thought of it that way. Trust me. You are exactly what I needed in a wife. I'm glad you're finally here. I am too. Josie was honest with him, but she still wasn't certain he was going to continue to be a good man with her. What if he had a temper like her stepfather? When it was time for bed that evening, Josie clung to the opposite side of the mattress as she had the night before. He looked over at her and shook his head. If tonight is anything like last night, you'll be asleep on top of me within the hour. She blushed, thankful for the darkness. I wasn't aware you knew. He chuckled. I sure did. And just so you know, you can use me as a mattress anytime. Thank you? You're welcome. Josie rose early and made breakfast. While her toast was in the oven, she filled a jar with the leftovers from supper the night before. Apparently, she would have the morning free to take care of household chores, but she would have lunch with her friends at Maggie's house before foraging all afternoon. She was happy to know what was expected of her, but she worried Jack would decide she was spending too much time out of the house. Hopefully, he wouldn't be angry with her. As soon as he'd left for the day, she washed the dishes and picked up her knitting needles. She wanted Jack to have the necessities to keep him warm throughout the winter. When it was 11:30, she deposited her knitting into a basket and dressed warmly. She took a large basket to put the forage she found into. She arrived at Maggie's just a little early, and she happily picked up Maggie's crying baby. Your mama will be done soon, Josie said. Maggie was cooking lunch for them. It wasn't long before the cabin was filled with 8 women, 2 babies, and laughter. I brought bread, Myrtle said. Thank goodness, Josie replied. I used all the bread I got from the store yesterday for breakfast this morning. All of the women happily accepted their bread, and half the women got dessert. Myrtle sat close to Josie. How is everything with your new husband? He's not at all what I expected. He's kind. At least he seems to be so far. My mother didn't receive beatings until she'd been married for a year and had a girl and not a boy. Just remember, you don't have to let him hit you. Elizabeth Tandy offered to send ship and train fare if any of us were mistreated. I know. I really don't want to ask her to do that, though. Josie took a deep breath. He didn't even complain about supper. Someone put meat on my table, and I turned it into a soupish stewish thing. He said it was good. We need to work on some cooking lessons. I bought a book of receipts from the store yesterday. I'll be coming to you with questions often. Myrtle grinned. I'll answer every one of them. After lunch, they all scattered. Josie was again with Sally, and they foraged together. When we're done today, we're going to take the forage to Maggie's to divide. Belle will bring us all meat for our suppers. Usually, she brings everyone the same thing, but sometimes she brings choices. Since I don't know how to cook or know what my husband enjoys, I'll take whatever I can get and pray that I can find a receipt in my brand new cookbook. Sally chuckled. Any one of us would be happy to teach you to cook. I'll probably have Myrtle teach me, Josie said. She's very talented in the kitchen. And I know the two of you are very close. Do you think she'll really start a bakery? Josie nodded emphatically. Myrtle never thinks about doing something for long. She's too eager to start whatever it is. She had always looked up to Myrtle, and she wanted to be more like her. That's so true, Sally said, shaking her head. She's kind of scary sometimes, don't you think? She's scary? I heard you grew an incredible garden, started a pig farm, and fished for salmon. Sally laughed. I gave up the salmon. Agnes is taking that chore from me. Still, you knew when you got here what you wanted to do. I hope I can figure out what I'll do soon. You will. Trust me. Chapter 4. Agnes brought smoked salmon for their suppers that night. Josie stared at it for a moment, trying to remember if there was a receipt for cooked salmon in her new book. Myrtle pulled Josie aside from the others and quietly explained how to warm the salmon in a pan with a bit of lard, flaking it into smaller pieces that would be easier to eat. Fry some potatoes with it, and you'll have a good meal. High heat? Josie asked. No, you want to do it over a low heat. It won't be good if you fry it with high heat. Josie nodded. I'll do my best. At least if it doesn't work, you'll have bread, Myrtle said with a wink. But really, it should be easy. Thank you. I feel like I'm never going to be a good cook. You'll get there. Your mother never taught you, but you're a smart woman. Cooking will come easily. I hope so. Josie said as she started for her own cabin. She was a few steps down the trail when she turned back, realizing she'd forgotten to talk to Belle about deer hide for the mucklucks. She quickly explained what she needed to do. "Come home with me. I have some cured hide that will be perfect. If your husband likes his mucklucks, I may beg you to make some for Everett," Belle said. "You wouldn't need to beg. You're providing food for my husband and me. I'll happily do anything I can to pay you back." Belle smiled. "You may end up making them for all of our husbands. We'll see how these turn out." Jack seemed a little shocked that I was willing to try, but I've always enjoyed craft projects. "This will be a special one." "It certainly will," Belle replied. When they got to Belle's cabin, she put her little boy onto the floor, and he immediately started crawling away. Josie smiled down at him. Oh, how she wanted a baby of her own, but she was afraid of how Jack would react if she had a girl. All men wanted sons, didn't they? Josie took the cured hide and tucked it under one arm. In her basket, she had the salmon for supper as well as her share of the forage of the day. And a jar of jam. She had no idea what kind of jam, but it would go on toast in the morning. "Thank you so much." "You're very welcome," Belle said. "If there's anything else you need, just let me know." Josie hurried toward the cabin she shared with Jack, wanting to make certain supper was ready when he arrived home. Maybe if she kept the house spotless and had supper ready every night when he came home from work, he would forgive her if she had a girl. Maybe. She immediately rekindled the fire when she arrived home, putting a cast-iron skillet in the middle of it to warm the way Myrtle had told her. She carefully flaked the salmon and added potatoes to the skillet to cook as well. Then she carefully sliced and added one of the onions she'd found that afternoon. She stood over the stove while their meal cooked, afraid to walk away lest it burn. Jack walked in just as she finished the meal, and she served their plates while he washed his hands. "That smells delicious. Didn't you tell me you don't know how to cook?" "I'm asking for advice on how to cook what I'm given for meals. My friend Myrtle is a genius, and she always knows what to do." Josie poured each of them a cup of coffee before joining him at the table. "I hope you like salmon. It seems there's a great deal of it waiting for us this winter." Jack chuckled. "It's actually one of my favorite foods." "Well, good. Then we won't go hungry this winter." "I don't think I've ever had it, but I'm excited to try." She bowed her head as he prayed. "I hope I cooked it right." He cut into the salmon with the side of his fork and popped it into his mouth. He chewed slowly, and for a moment, Josie was afraid she'd done something to mess it up, but he nodded. "It's good. A little less salt next time and it will be perfect." For a moment, it felt as if her heart stopped. If there was too much salt, would he get angry with her? He seemed to be enjoying the meal, but men were temperamental, as she knew very well. Josie took a bite of her own fish, and she had to agree with him. It was a bit too salty, but it was still good. Very good. She'd made 2 suppers in a row and hadn't burned a thing. "We have a great deal of potatoes coming as well." "Do you like fried potatoes?" she asked, hoping it would help him forget about the salt. He nodded. "I like potatoes any way you're willing to make it. Fried, baked, mashed, boiled, or creamed." "Creamed?" she asked. She'd never heard of creamed potatoes. "My dad used to cream potatoes. Basically, it was potatoes in a white sauce. It became one of my favorite ways to eat them." "You should write him and get the receipt," Josie said. "I'd learn to make them." "I'll do that," he said. "Oh, I got hide for the mucklucks from Belle today. She said if yours turn out well, she will have me make some for Everett." She stopped and bit her lip. "I should have said Mr. Thompson. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to speak so familiarly about another man." She shrank away from him, worried his fist would soon connect with her. "I'm sure you called him that because Belle did." He watched as she moved away from him. "You don't think I'm going to hit you for using another man's first name, do you?" Josie blushed. "It's what my stepfather would have done." "I'm not your stepfather." He covered her hand with his own. I firmly believe that men who hurt women deserve to be drawn and quartered. She blinked a few times. Really? Really? I don't know what you saw with your mother's second marriage, but I assure you, I am not like your stepfather. He frowned. Is that why you start the nights so far away from me? She nodded slowly. I've been waiting for you to get angry with me and hit me. It's not going to happen. I promise. She'd heard her stepfather promise to never hit her mother again, only to hit her again a few hours later. She would reserve judgment. She spent the evening working on the mucklucks, realizing they were more work than she'd expected. The hide couldn't be sewn easily, so she had to make each hole individually, and then she was able to sew the pieces together. She was thankful she'd had her sewing scissors sharpened shortly before leaving Massachusetts. She wasn't certain she could have cut the hide otherwise. While she worked, Jack read her the chapters from the Bible they would be studying with the group on Sunday. She was thankful he did so, because she wouldn't have felt she could take the time to read otherwise. When he was finished, he watched her work on the boots for a moment. Those are going to be a lot of work, aren't they? She shrugged. At least we won't be spending a lot of money on boots. Very true. He stood. I'm ready for bed. Josie nodded. I think I am too. When they got into bed, he pulled her toward him, and he kissed her. No more clinging to that side of the bed. You're going to end up sleeping in my arms, so why don't we start out that way? I won't hurt you. He wrapped both arms around her, holding her close. Good night, Josie. She yawned. Good night, Jack. Within a few weeks, there was too much snow on the ground to forage, and other than lunches, Josie spent her time in the cabin. She made 4 pairs of mucklucks for her friends' husbands after she finished Jack's. She made him a red scarf, hat, and gloves, thinking people would be able to see him easier, and he would be less likely to have something happen in the cold. He could be spotted if he fell. After all of those projects were finished, she started knitting for the store. Each time she finished a set of hat, scarf, and gloves, she would show them to her friends, and if no one wanted it for their husband, she took it to the store. The nights grew longer, and she spent more time alone than she ever had in her life. She became sad as she stared out the window at the darkness. Finally, she decided she had to stop being alone, or she wouldn't be able to continue on with a smile on her face. So, after lunch one day, she walked with Myrtle to the store and told her friend how she was feeling. Myrtle immediately invited her to spend mornings in her cabin with her. You can knit or sew while I bake, Myrtle said, smiling. You'll have a chance to suggest desserts. The following morning, Josie went to Myrtle's cabin as soon as Jack had left for work. She was still nervous around Jack, but it had gotten much better as time went by. Josie happily knitted and chatted with Myrtle as her friend made many loaves of bread and some sugar cookie dough cobblers. When Myrtle was finished with her baking, Josie stood and washed dishes with her friend. I'm still trying to decide what I should do. I didn't mind foraging, but it didn't excite me either. You're so happy baking and cooking, but I don't feel that either. What about making mucklucks and knitting? Myrtle asked. I get bored. I like to clean. I wonder if I could maybe take in laundry. That's an idea. Do you think that would make you happy? Josie shrugged. Maybe, although, with as seldom as these men wash their clothes, I'm not sure I want to touch them. Myrtle laughed. You could also clean people's homes, I would think. There are so many bachelors around here. I'm sure some would pay for a once-a-month cleaning. Or you could work with me. I want to open that bakery so badly I can taste it, but Aaron won't let me do it without a partner to wait tables and do dishes. How would you like to work with me waiting tables and doing dishes? That's what I did at the hotel. Josie thought about it, but I wouldn't have to deal with men pinching my bottom or making rude comments if I worked for you. Very true. Think about it. I would do all the baking and make soups every day. I'll talk to Jack about it. He may not want me serving other men. Josie knew her stepfather would have gotten angry at the mere thought of his wife serving other men. But she was slowly learning that Jack was absolutely nothing like her stepfather. Why, he hadn't even tried to consummate their marriage yet. He seemed to truly respect her feelings. Are you getting more comfortable with Jack? Myrtle asked. Josie nodded. Everything is a little easier. I'm still nervous around him. I don't know if that will ever change, but he's very kind to me. I just hope it continues that way. Myrtle nodded. Aaron wouldn't hurt me for anything, and I have a feeling your Jack feels the same way about you. We're in a better place here. There aren't enough women. If Jack hit you, you could go outside and choose another husband in an instant. Josie shook her head. I think if Jack ever hit me, I wouldn't have the courage to ever look at another man, not after seeing my mother all black and blue with broken arms. I think he broke her arms 8 different times. Just remember that you can't blame Jack for what your stepfather did. I know it was very hard for you to join us and become a mail-order bride, but I'm so glad you did. I need my friend. Once the cabin was tidy, they left for lunch at Maggie's, with Myrtle pulling her wagon behind her. Josie wasn't certain it could be called a wagon because it was on runners for the winter, but she couldn't really call it a sled, could she? Josie felt a little more eager to join in the conversation at Maggie's that day. She wasn't certain what had happened to her, but between being alone and the darkness, she had stopped feeling like herself or caring about what was happening around her. Simply spending the morning with Myrtle helped tremendously. Myrtle passed out bread and desserts, and Belle shared meat with everyone. I think we're actually going to have more meat than we need this winter, Belle said. Thanks to Lula getting that bear. Lula grinned. There's no feeling like it. I mean, I grieve for the animal I killed, but it's meat for the winter, and that makes it all worth it. I think we're doing bear at my house tonight, Belle said. I know Agnes brought whitefish for Myrtle. What would everyone else like? Salmon, whitefish, bear, venison, or elk? Rabbit? Josie asked. Myrtle had taught her to make a rabbit stew that was absolutely perfect. Sure. There's rabbit, Belle said. Follow me home after lunch, and I'll get you some. Thank you. Josie realized that just days before, she would have told Belle to give her whatever no one else wanted, but she was feeling more like herself again. She went with Belle to get the meat, but then she hurried to catch up with Myrtle. Oddly enough, many of the men had started meeting Myrtle on her way to the store so they could get first pick of whatever treats Myrtle made. Josie watched as she sold many of her baked goods to men who then went back to work and then sold the rest to Katie for the store. Josie watched as Katie slipped some of the goodies to one side for her own use. As she and Myrtle left the store and walked toward their cabins, Josie said, "You really have made your own business already. It's a good thing I love you so much or I would be extremely jealous." Myrtle laughed. "You're finding where you fit in. Half the men who work for the lumber operation wear your hats, scarves, and gloves. But they don't get the same look on their faces they get when they see your sweets." "Maybe not, but they're much warmer thanks to you." Josie grinned. "I never thought of it that way." "You should." Chapter 5. Josie made rabbit stew that evening following a receipt Myrtle had shared with her. She realized she should have read what needed to happen before leaving that morning because the stew needed to cook for half the day, and she'd been gone until well after lunch. She said a quick prayer that Jack wouldn't be angry that supper wasn't ready when he walked into the house. She'd seen her stepfather deliberately burn her mother's arm for not having supper ready on time. When Jack walked in, he hung up his coat. "How long until supper?" he asked. Josie was shaking as she said, "An hour or two." "All right," Jack said calmly. "I'm going to have some hardtack, but don't worry, I'll be hungry when it's ready." Josie blinked. "You're not angry?" "Why would I be angry? It's just food." He gave her a perplexed look. "But, there's dessert if you want some. And bread. I'll have them with my meal." He washed his hands. "How was your day?" "It was good. I spent most of it with Myrtle." "Good. I think you spend too much time in the cabin alone. With as dark as it is, it might start to make you melancholic, so spend time with her and your other friends." Josie was having trouble understanding how pleasant he was being about supper. "How about some coffee to go with your hardtack?" I'd love that if you have some made. If not, I'll have water. She got down a cup and poured from the pot of coffee she'd made a short time earlier. Placing the cup in front of him, she picked up her knitting. Thank you for understanding. I'm not going to get angry over something so small. What would make you angry? She asked. He tilted his head to one side, thinking about it. If you kissed another man. If you burned down the house, though that would be more fearful than angry. I'm not sure. I don't get angry easily. She took a deep breath. When I was 6, my mother didn't have supper ready when my stepfather got home from work. My little brother had spent all day crying, and she'd been tending to him and lost track of time. He took the spoon out of the soup pot and held it against her arm. It was metal, and it left a horrible scar. She still has it. Jack closed his eyes, thinking of how fearful she would have been to see something like that. I'm so sorry that happened. You must have been horribly frightened. She nodded. I was. I'll never forget my mother's scream. Please understand that your stepfather is a horrible person. No man should ever hurt a woman or child. Josie felt tears swimming in her eyes, but she refused to acknowledge them. Is your mother still married to your stepfather? He asked softly. She nodded. That's why I moved out as soon as I could. I had to sneak away in the middle of the night, but I couldn't bear to watch him hurt my mother every day. He burned her every day? Jack asked, wishing he could throttle her mother's husband. No. He only burned her 3 times I can remember. Mostly, he used his fists or threw her across the room. One time he beat her bare back with a riding crop. That's terrible. You should have told someone. Josie shrugged. I tried once. I told a policeman. He told me if my mother was obedient my stepfather wouldn't have to beat her. She shook her head. After that, I didn't tell anyone, but I would take over her chores if she was hurting too much to do them. All but cooking. She always did the cooking because I didn't know how, and she didn't dare teach me. He narrowed his eyes. Why didn't she dare teach you? Because he wouldn't have eaten it, and he would have beaten her for wasting food. She sighed. I couldn't stop him. Did you ever try? He asked, half afraid of the answer. She lifted her hair, which had been cut into bangs since she was 12, when she'd tried to help, and pointed to a scar. Only once. He opened his mouth to ask what had happened, but he knew the answer would send him to Massachusetts, and he was afraid of what he'd do once he arrived. Instead, he covered her hand with his. He's a monster. Josie closed her eyes and nodded. He is. Do you still hear from your mother? Josie shook her head. I've kept up a correspondence with my sister, but not my mother. I think Ma is angry with me for leaving. You did the right thing. Who knows what would have happened if you'd stayed? Annie wrote me at the hotel, and I've told her I was moving to Yeti. I think Annie is ashamed. He's her father, after all. I hope she writes to you here. I think it would do you good to know how your mother is doing. Perhaps, Josie said. Every time she'd opened a letter from her sister, she'd worried that her mother was dead. Most men are not like him, you know. She shrugged. I suppose not. They sat in silence for a long while as she continued working on the socks she was making, and he read from the Bible. Finally, she stood and checked on the stew. It's done. She quickly ladled 2 portions into bowls and cut bread, placing them both on the table. Then she refilled their coffee cups. When he prayed before their meal, he prayed that her family would be safe. Josie wanted to cry that he cared enough to include that in his prayer, but instead, she took a tentative bite of her stew. It's not as good as Myrtle's, but it's good, she said, her voice full of surprise. He chuckled. I expected nothing less. That evening when they went to bed, instead of clinging to the side as she had been, she moved straight into his arms, kissing him softly. Thank you, she whispered. He didn't ask what she was thanking him for. He knew. She was thanking him for a future that didn't include the brutality she'd witnessed as a child. He held her close, his hand stroking over her back. After a few minutes, she lifted her head and looked at him. I was given to understand that men are always in a hurry to consummate a marriage, and we've waited weeks. You needed time to get used to me. So, I'm giving you that time. She thought about it for a moment. I don't think I need more time. You didn't burn me or beat me for being late with supper. You're a better man than he is. He shook his head. That's not saying much. It went against everything his body was screaming at him to do, but he held her close and didn't try to do anything else. She needed more time and he would give it to her. Josie fell asleep in his arms that night, and he considered it a win. She was starting to trust him when she was awake as well as when she was asleep. For the next week, Josie knitted and made boots. Nothing seemed to be what she wanted to do though. She spent every morning with Myrtle, helping her with the dishes after the baking was finished. What do I want to be when I grow up? She asked Myrtle late Friday morning. I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, while everyone else knows what they want. That's something you have to decide for yourself, Myrtle told her as they washed the dishes and packed Myrtle's wagon. It's making me crazy. Myrtle sighed. But you're planning on staying here, right? You're going to remain married to Jack and live happily ever after? Josie laughed. Happily ever after? I'm not so certain about that. But Jack is a good man. I was late with supper one night, and he didn't even get angry. What did you expect? Well, when my ma was late with supper, my stepfather burned her. Myrtle stopped wiping the dishes and turned fully to her friend. Your stepfather was not a good person. He was evil. A monster even. You have to stop judging all men by him. Josie stared down into the dishwater. I know. What I don't know is how to do that. If you had never seen how your stepfather treated your mother, and you met Jack, what would you think of him? Good question, Josie said, thinking about it. I would think he's kind. Easy to please. Not all men are easy to please, but I'm glad Jack is. He sounds like the opposite of your stepfather, so stop comparing them. Accept Jack for who he is. A good man who treats you with kindness. Josie nodded slowly. I'll try to do that. Don't try. Do it. If you find yourself comparing the two men, make your brain instead tell you 5 things you like about Jack. 5 reasons you're glad you married him and not someone else. All right. That's what I'll do. And if you feel like you can, tell Jack all the reasons you're glad you married him and not someone else. He's the man you want to spend the rest of your life with, so you should tell him. I suppose you're right. I will do my very best. That evening when Jack returned from work, she had supper on the table. Did you have a good day at work? She asked, determined to be positive and not dwell on the past. He nodded, washing his hands. It was a long day. One of the men had a tree fall on him. He probably won't make it. Oh no. That's terrible. Jack nodded. He's a good man. I was proud to call him friend. Josie set supper on the table and sat down with him. I'm so sorry, I am too. He ate his soup in silence that evening, his mind obviously on his friend. What can we do for the hurt man? Josie asked as she was clearing the table. What's his name again? She couldn't remember the name he'd used when he'd prayed for the other man. Luke. Katie is watching over him. I don't think there's anything we can do. Josie frowned. Why don't I take them lunch tomorrow? Even if Luke isn't up to eating, Katie and Mr. Johnson will be. I'm sure Katie doesn't have time to cook as well as care for your friend. You'd do that for me? Jack asked. I'd do anything for you. You've helped me see that not all men are mean. I feel blessed to get to spend the rest of my life with you. Jack stood and walked to her, wrapping his arms around her tightly. That means more than I can express. I've been comparing you to my stepfather since the day I got here. I don't need to do that anymore. You're nothing like him. You're someone I'm proud to have as my husband. He rested his cheek on her head. I'm so glad you realized that. Thank you. She hugged him tightly. Let me do our supper dishes, and you think about what I should make. Remember, I'm not a great cook. You keep telling me that, but I have no complaints. Josie went to the sink and washed the dishes, putting them away. Then she warmed some milk and poured it into a glass for him. To help you sleep, she said quietly. He looked at the glass as if it was distasteful before taking it and drinking it. Thank you. She served him a slice of the cake Myrtle had made for their dessert. What do you think you would like to eat? Assuming he's able to eat tomorrow. Jack thought for a moment. He loves anything sweet. He's one of the men who takes a late lunch so he can get the sweets fresh as soon as they get to the store. I've never really made a dessert, but I will. Why don't I make a duck soup, and I'll figure out something to bake for him. Jack reached over and took her cookbook from its spot on a shelf and leafed through it. How about sugar cookies? I know he loves sugar cookies. Is he going to want frosting on them? I've never made frosting or cookies. There's less chance I'll mess up if I just do the cookies. Jack nodded. I think just cookies are fine. He may not even be able to eat them. Where's the nearest doctor? Josie asked, afraid of the answer. Tanana. It's a 4-hour walk from here in good conditions. And I would call the current conditions less than desirable. Josie glanced out the window. It was clear when I got home, she said, staring at the whirling snow. She wasn't certain it would even be safe to go to the store with food the following day. I don't work tomorrow, so I'll take the food to Katie. I don't want you lost in the storm. Well, I don't want you lost in the storm either. He chuckled. I've walked the road to town many times. I'll be all right. Don't get hurt, she said softly. I don't want to think about what life would be like without you. He pulled her into his lap and held her close. You're different tonight. Less afraid. Not afraid at all, she said. I'm no longer comparing you, so I'm not thinking about any man but you. And you are a good man. He kissed her then, and for the first time, she responded passionately. He knew the time was finally right. He gently nudged her to her feet and swept her into his arms, carrying her to the bed. He touched her in places she'd never been touched, and each stroke of his hand made her feel loved and cared for. When it was all over, she smiled as she snuggled into his side. What's the smile about? Jack asked. I feared the marital act my entire life. And it was glorious. I feel closer to you than I've ever felt to anyone. Have I mentioned yet how glad I am to have you in my life? He grinned. I guess you responded to the right letter. I know I did. Marriage to you isn't scary at all. Chapter 6. Josie decided the following morning to talk Myrtle into cooking lessons. She was certain one of the other friends there could help her, but she wanted to learn from the best, and that was Myrtle. After finishing her morning chores, Josie walked to Myrtle's cabin, shivering a bit in the morning chill. Myrtle was already working on the daily baking. What are you making this morning? Josie asked. Bread is in the oven, Myrtle replied. I'm going to make meat pies and pies. Katie finally got in the small pie pans I ordered. Then I don't have to sell the pie by the slice, and I can sell a full small pie for the same price. It will save on mess. That's a great idea. What flavor today? Today is blueberry. I love blueberry. My mouth is watering, and I haven't even finished the pie crusts. Myrtle grinned at Josie. I need to ask you for something. I'll do something you need in return, of course. Mend clothes, knit socks, or hats. Stop beating around the bush. What do you need? Josie sighed. Cooking lessons. Myrtle stopped working on the pie crust she was making. If I teach you to cook, will you be my partner in the bakery? You could make the soups, or just serve customers and do the dishes. It's just that Aaron doesn't think I can go into business on my own, and he's insisting I find a partner. Josie tilted her head to one side, thinking about it. Are you sure you want me? You know I'm helpless in the kitchen. That's perfect though. Myrtle said. I really want to be able to do all the cooking and baking myself. You could clean after me, which I know is something you love to do. Oh, Josie, please say yes. Of course, I'll say yes. I was starting to think about taking in men's laundry, but I really didn't want to. Nothing else is grabbing my attention, but I do love to clean. Myrtle squealed and hugged her friend, sending up a small cloud of flour. Oops. Josie laughed. Let me clean this up. After I take my baked goods to the store in the afternoons, I'll teach you to cook. That's when I make supper anyway, and you could learn a new meal every day. I have a cookbook, but it has fancy meals like beef Wellington. I just want to make meals my husband will like. I don't know how to cook any fancy meals, I'm afraid. I just know how to cook things I like, and I love to experiment with baking and make new things. Myrtle grinned. I'm so excited. I'll tell Aaron I have a partner tonight. Well, what can I do to help now? Josie asked. Dishes? And I'm behind on laundry because of all the time I'm spending baking. I'll bring in some water from the well. That afternoon, Myrtle taught Josie to make a rich rabbit stew. I love your stew, Josie said as she took the first bite. She'd followed along and made the same stew following every step Myrtle made. It was a good thing Myrtle had 2 stoves. It's good. Of course it is. You have the ability to cook, but no one ever taught you. In 6 months, you'll be as good as me, Myrtle said with a smile. Josie felt proud as she carried the stew home later that afternoon. She couldn't wait for Jack to try it. She'd made a meal that she considered good. Not that Jack had ever complained about her cooking. The one time she'd burned a meal so badly they couldn't eat it, he'd pulled out jerky and hardtack and hadn't said a word. She put the pot on her stove and quickly started a fire in it. She knew Jack would be home any minute. She quickly set the table and put on a pot of coffee. He always preferred coffee with his supper, and she loved it too. She had 2 small blueberry pies for their supper. Myrtle had made them while she hung the clothes on the line. It felt a bit odd cleaning her friend's house, but she was so happy with the cooking lessons, it didn't even matter. When Jack opened the door a few minutes later, he inhaled deeply. Something smells delicious. Myrtle taught me to make her rabbit stew today. I sure hope someone decides to raise rabbits. You're going to love this. Why don't you raise rabbits? Jack asked, walking up behind her and wrapping his arms around her. I wouldn't be able to butcher them. I'd name them all and fall in love with them, and then I'd have to kill them. It's best if I leave the rabbit raising to someone else. That makes sense, Jack said. Besides, I've decided what I want to do to contribute. Oh? He raised an eyebrow as he waited for her revelation. I'm going to work with Myrtle in her bakery. I'll serve tables and do the cleaning, and she'll make delicious meals. You won't mind doing all the cleaning? That sounds like a lot of work. Josie shook her head, smiling up at him. That's why this will work. I really prefer cleaning to cooking and baking. I know how it will turn out when I'm done. But cooking, I never know when I'm going to mess something up. Well, then, it sounds like you have your future planned out. I hope you're hungry. This is the best thing I've ever cooked because I followed along behind Myrtle and did everything she did. I don't have a problem with your cooking, Jack said. I do. I need to do better for you. Josie grinned. Wash your hands, and we'll eat. You'll see what I mean. He did as she said and met her at the table. She served 2 large bowls of the stew, cut up bread and gave them each a slice, and poured their coffee. When she finally sat down, he took her hand in his as he prayed, thanking God for bringing her into his life. When he took his first bite of stew, his eyes widened. This is really good. You made this? Josie nodded. And Myrtle wrote down the receipt for me, so I can make it any time we have rabbit. I would happily eat this every day for the rest of my life. She laughed. Me too. I've had it before, but making it myself makes me feel so accomplished. Myrtle told me that I have the ability to cook, but no one ever taught me, and she's right. My ma wanted to teach me, but she was afraid of what would happen if it didn't turn out. My stepfather would have lost his mind. Jack smiled a bit. For once, she'd spoken about her stepfather and his abuse without acting afraid. Finally. I smell something else, he said, changing the subject instead of forcing her to dwell on the past. Blueberry pie. Myrtle bought a bunch of little pie plates, so we each will get our own. The pie is easier for her to sell that way. Is she glad you'll be working with her? He asked. Myrtle? Oh, yes. When I agreed to do it, she all but danced around her cabin. Josie laughed. She's already got what she wants for the bakery in mind, but Aaron wouldn't let her get the land or anything until she had a partner. Now she has one. Aaron is working in the sawmill for me again tomorrow. I don't mind working out in the cold, but he's really happier inside. Works for everyone. Jack shrugged. I gave him money for bringing you back, but I feel like, since we surprised him with it, we should all trade places to work with him as well. He thinks he came out on the best side of the deal, but honestly, I think I did too. Good. Josie stood and brought 2 small pies back to the table. I love Myrtle's pies. I think once she's done teaching me to cook, she'll need to teach me to bake. I wouldn't complain about that even a little bit, he said. I love the idea of getting more baked goods, though Myrtle keeps us supplied. She does desserts for all of us. Every other night. If I could learn to bake, we'd have dessert every night. Do you have a sweet tooth? He asked, taking a bite of the pie. All of my teeth are sweet, Josie replied. I could live on just sweets, though I know it wouldn't be healthy. No, it wouldn't, but it would taste good. Sometimes taste is all that matters, she said with a grin. After the kitchen was cleaned, she sat down at the table with him to do her knitting, and he read the portion of the Bible they would study that weekend. She felt like she was being lazy if she sat down and read herself, but if he did it for her, well, it was probably still lazy, but at least she was getting the information she needed. All day, she daydreamed about what it felt like in his arms the night before, so when it was time for bed, she went to him readily, excited to feel him inside her again. Being with Jack was special. Josie learned another meal the following day, but Myrtle also taught her how to make her sugar cookies, which could be used on their own, or with frosting, or as a crust for cobbler. Josie felt like she was learning quickly, now that she'd opened herself up to the fact that it wasn't that she couldn't cook. It was that no one had ever taught her. They were very different things. She'd also finished another scarf and hat, and she happily took them to the store when Myrtle took her baked goods. They were going to the store with fewer and fewer baked goods daily. I sure hope you get that bakery of yours open in spring, Katie told Myrtle. But remember, part of your lease will still be bringing me dessert every day. Myrtle smiled. We can actually start discussing the lease now. Josie has agreed to partner with me on the bakery. Oh, that's wonderful, Katie said. I'm excited for there to be another business in our little town. Yeti is growing, Josie said with a smile. I hope it doesn't grow so big it won't be recognizable. I don't think it will. Most women don't care to be this remote, Katie said with a shrug. I suppose not, Josie said. I wouldn't mind a few more women finding their way here, though. None of us would, Katie said. As they walked back toward Myrtle's house, Josie asked, Are you going to need more stoves for the bakery? Myrtle nodded. I will move one of my stoves there, and probably get 2 more. It will make things easier for both of us. And you'll need dishes, Josie said. So many things. I will. And a cash register would probably be easier than just a money box, but I'll worry about that when we get closer to time to open. I've drawn up plans, and I'll have you look at them this afternoon and tell me if you think they'll work. I'm thinking about having 4 tables for people to eat at, plus the bakery shelves. That sounds smart. Do you think 3 stoves is enough? I'm not certain. If I have to, I can do some of the baking at home, but I'd rather not. If it seems like I'll need another, I'll talk to Katie and order another. It would be good if we could make meat pies for the men to take home as well, but I'm not sure that's possible with the other things we'll do. Myrtle grinned at Josie. I can't wait. I'm excited. I told Jack, and he's happy about it. Honestly, he was just hoping I'd find something I wanted to do. He sounds like a good man. I haven't really had a chance to talk to him much. We should have you over for supper one night. Perhaps after a good day of learning to cook. Myrtle laughed. Or you could host, and I could bring supper. I'll make supper, and you bring dessert, Josie countered. I think we should all be playing cards on Saturday nights or doing something together anyway. I know the cabins are small, but they're big enough for us to have 3 other couples over, maybe. Belle told me that Everett is planning to add on 2 bedrooms to their cabin come spring. We'll talk her into hosting. Josie smiled. But we should start now. I don't think any of us would mind being a bit cramped. It's really a good idea, Myrtle agreed. Saturday night, Josie said. Just you, Aaron, Jack, and me. I'll make your rabbit stew, and you can make dessert. Myrtle nodded. That sounds like fun. We'll play cards. I know Jack has a deck. I brought a deck of cards and my cribbage board from home. We could all play cribbage. I love cribbage. It's fun with 2 people or 4, so we should play that. If the men don't know how to play, we'll teach them. Oh, good. Saturday night. Around 6? Myrtle asked. Perfect. I'll have supper ready and waiting. Josie rubbed her mittened hands together. I can't believe I'm this excited to have friends over, but I am. You're going to love Jack. He's a really good man. It sounds like it. I think you were afraid of him at first. I was. I'm not now. I've never seen him really angry, though, and that may change. I don't think it will. I'm so glad you found a man who makes you comfortable. Me too. I was very worried on the way here. Josie shook her head. I really can't believe I had the guts to get on that train. I almost turned tail a dozen times on the way here. That's a big part of the reason I wanted to travel together. I thought you would be able to be brave if we were together. Josie sighed. You're right, I probably wouldn't have come without you. I know it's silly, but it's not silly at all. My family life was very different from yours. Myrtle shook her head. I'm surprised you were ever able to let a man touch you with the way your stepfather was. He only hit me a few times, though. That doesn't matter. You saw how he treated your mother. I did. I've learned not to compare Jack with him. It helps me. Aaron is so excited to have so much time in the sawmill right now, Myrtle said, changing the subject. He's thankful for all the men who are paying him back by trading shifts. He said he's gotten the best end of the deal he didn't know he was making. Josie laughed. He probably has. Chapter 7. Myrtle and Aaron were right on time Saturday evening, and Josie had supper on the table waiting for them. Thanks for coming, Josie said, excited to have a Saturday night of fun. I brought cobbler, Myrtle replied. I hope mixed berry is all right. It sounds delicious, Jack said, shaking hands with Aaron. You getting soft working at the sawmill so much? Aaron nodded. I don't remember how to be out in the cold anymore. While they ate, the men talked about work, and Josie found out a man they worked with had been badly injured when the axe head had flown off and embedded into his foot. Are there usually a lot of injuries at work? Josie asked, worried for Jack. Aaron shrugged. There are a few every year. We should all be checking our axes daily, and Stephen wasn't very good about it. The accident is his own fault. But that doesn't make it any less devastating, does it? Myrtle asked. Jack shook his head. He'll probably have to go back and live with someone who can take care of him for a while. Where's he from? He asked Aaron. I think he said North Carolina. His folks are still alive, so I'm sure he'll move back in with them. At least he has somewhere to go, Josie said softly. In Stephen's position, she'd have nowhere to go. She couldn't watch her mother deal with her stepfather's punishments ever again. True, Jack said, reaching over and squeezing Josie's hand. He seemed to understand what she was thinking, and it made Josie feel at ease. After supper, Josie and Myrtle did the dishes together while the men talked, and then Myrtle pulled out her cribbage board and deck of cards. Do you men know how to play cribbage? Aaron nodded, but Jack shook his head, so Aaron quickly explained the game. Josie looked at Myrtle. Men against women? She asked. Myrtle nodded. I think that's a good idea. Then we'll know how Aaron did teaching Jack. Aaron shook his head. I did great. They moved chairs so that the women sat opposite one another as did the men. Aaron dealt first, explaining about the crib. Josie and Myrtle had played cribbage with Ella and Lula on the ship from Seattle to Ketchikan, so they were used to playing together. It didn't take them long to go all the way around the board, while the men floundered less than 3/4 of the way. Again, Jack said. I think I understand better now. They played 3 games before Jack finally yawned. If we're going to get up for Bible study, we should probably stop here. Well, we should stop now that we've beaten you as well. No chance for you two to get revenge. Aaron laughed. I'm sure they'll win again next time. You should come to our house next week, Myrtle said. I'll make supper, and we'll let Josie bring dessert. It will be a good lesson for her. Josie made a face. You have too much faith in my abilities, she said to Myrtle. No, Myrtle replied, you don't have enough faith. Jack watched the two friends interact. Myrtle was obviously good for Josie. After Myrtle and Aaron had left for the night, Jack looked at Josie. How long have you and Myrtle been friends? Years, Josie replied. We both started at the hotel as dishwashers around the same time. I was afraid of my own shadow. She was a calming influence. I couldn't ask for a better friend. I'm glad you know that you can work together already. I was a little worried about that. We'll be fine. I can't think of anyone else in the world I'd want to start a business with. After Bible study the following day, Belle invited Josie and Jack over for Sunday dinner with her family. I made a hearty venison stew. I haven't met your husband yet, and I thought it would be nice to have you over. Josie looked at Jack, who nodded. We'd love to, Josie said. Can I bring anything? Belle shook her head, just your appetites. They walked with Belle and her family to her home. Once there, Belle bade them sit down while she served their meal, and Everett held their son. How old is he now? Josie asked, looking at the baby. She had a great deal of experience with small children because her stepfather had always demanded her mother's full attention when he was home. That left her with the babies. 8 months, Everett said, smiling down at the boy with pride. He's a beautiful child, Jack said. He glanced over at Josie, wondering if she wanted children. They'd talked about children in letters, but not in person yet. He's hungry, Everett replied. He loves stew. We take out the meat so he doesn't choke, but we keep the liquid and mash up the potatoes and carrots. He eats every bite. Well, he seems like a good boy. Belle hurried over with a bowl for everyone, including the baby. She took the boy from his father, and popped a bite of the mashed carrot into his mouth. Everett shook his head. It will be good when he learns to wait to eat until after we say grace. Josie smiled. I think his mother needs to learn not to feed him before grace. As they all laughed, Everett lowered his gaze and prayed for their meal. Heavenly Father, thank you for this food and everything you provide for us on a daily basis. Thank you for bringing friends into our home to share our meal with. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Belle had baked biscuits to go with the stew, and Josie broke off a piece, popping it into her mouth. These are wonderful. They may even be better than Myrtle's. I need the receipt if you don't mind. Belle smiled and nodded. I don't mind at all. Are you starting to bake? Josie sighed. I'm trying. Myrtle is working with me. Then you'll be an expert in no time, Belle said. Myrtle's cobbler with the cookie crust, Everett began. I have no words. Jack nodded emphatically. We had her and Aaron over for supper and cards last night, and she brought her cobbler. I finished mine and ate half of Josie's when she wasn't looking. Josie glared at Jack. I didn't think I ate it that fast. Jack winked at Josie and she shook her head. No manners. You like me anyway, Jack said. Josie sighed. What do you do with a husband like Jack? She asked Belle. Belle laughed. You put up with him. What else can you do? Josie thoroughly enjoyed the meal. I'm so glad you had us over. Give me another few weeks to learn to cook, and we'll return the favor. Jack shook his head. Your rabbit stew last night was delicious. You're ready for houseguests. Josie blushed. It was Myrtle's receipt. But you cooked it, Jack said. All right. How would you like to come over next Sunday after Bible study? Josie asked. Belle nodded, smiling. We'd love to. I look forward to it then. As do I, Jack said. I'll help you with the dishes, Josie said to Belle as she got to her feet. Belle passed the baby back to Everett. Thank you. I'd appreciate that. When it was time to go, Josie thanked Belle profusely for the invitation and the meal. It was delicious. I do love a good venison stew, Jack added. They put on their coats and walked toward the door. Remember, you're coming to our place on Sunday, Jack said. As they walked home, Josie said, I hope they don't expect a great culinary masterpiece. I'm nervous. Cooking for Myrtle is one thing, but entirely another to cook for Belle and your boss. They'll love every bite, Jack said, putting his arm around Josie's shoulders as they walked. Josie sighed. What am I going to do with you, Jack? Just keep feeding me, and we'll both be happy. Josie grinned. He'd been happy with her before she could cook. She really had married a good man. I need to spend tomorrow morning darning your socks, she said. I did the wash on Friday, and one has the entire heel completely out of it. See what a good wife you are? You want me to have warm feet, she laughed, shaking her head. She hadn't expected to marry a man who was so easy to talk to, and who actually appreciated what she did for him. She had no idea why she'd been so fortunate, but she certainly wasn't complaining. When they reached their cabin, Jack took her hand and led her inside, leaning down to kiss her. I wanted to do that the whole time we were eating. I'm glad you were able to restrain yourself. I'm not certain how I feel about public displays of affection. As long as you don't mind private displays of affection, I can keep my hands to myself in public. He tugged her toward the bed. In fact, I think I need my hands on you now. Josie stared at him for a moment. But it's light out. Better to see my wife. True to her word, Josie took her mending to Myrtle's the following day. Jack needed new socks. Perhaps she'd make him some for Christmas. For now, she would mend the ones he had. Myrtle barely looked up from her baking when Josie came in. She was carefully pinching the edges of small pie crusts. I need to get faster, Myrtle said. I think you're already really fast. Myrtle shook her head. Not fast enough. She stood straight and flexed her back. Oh, you're mending. Josie nodded. Jack is hard on socks. So is Aaron. Could I beg you to? You don't have to beg. I'm getting free cooking lessons. Myrtle quickly washed her hands and walked to Josie with a basket of socks. Thank you. It gives me something to do while you bake, Josie said, truly not minding. She would rather darn socks than cook any day. Do you like my layout for the bakery? Myrtle asked. She'd sent her design home with Josie on Friday afternoon, and though they'd seen each other since, they hadn't been alone to talk shop. I do. I think it will work well. I doubt if we'll be able to fill more than 4 tables at once. Unless you plan to be open weekends. Josie's eyes widened. You don't plan to be open weekends, do you? Myrtle shook her head. No, I don't. I promised Aaron the bakery wouldn't take me away from him more than I already am. Oh, good. I'm not sure how Jack would like that. It was good to see the two of you together. You've told me everything is going well, but I had to see it for myself. He looks at you like he cares a great deal. Josie wrinkled her nose. He likes having a wife to cook for him and warm his bed. As soon as she mentioned bed, she covered her mouth. I shouldn't have said that. Myrtle laughed. Aaron likes having me to warm his bed too. Don't worry about it. We're both married women. We are. It seems so strange. It does. Do you remember telling me that you'd never marry? that men were evil? Josie laughed. I said a lot of things I shouldn't have when we first met. I'm sure we both did. I wanted to have my own shop before I even thought about a husband. And now look. I'm married before I get my bakery. Very true. I remember you telling me that you were going to forge a life of your own, and you'd never live under the thumb of any man. Myrtle laughed. Well, I don't exactly live under Aaron's thumb, but I do listen to him when he wants me to do something. You would have said that was unacceptable when we first met. Josie said, shaking her head. Look at us now. I think we've both grown up in many ways. We have. Myrtle stopped working on the crusts for a moment to watch Josie darn socks. You're so fast, and your stitches are elegant. When I darn a sock, it looks like half of it is gone. So, you teach me to cook and bake, and I teach you to darn socks. I think the arrangement we have now is better. Myrtle said. Josie frowned. What arrangement is that? I teach you to cook and bake, and you darn the socks for me. I would do anything for you, I think. Let's keep it that way. At lunch that day, all of the women brought their sewing or knitting, everyone except Myrtle, of course. How do you have time to bake so much and still have time to do all the other chores? Lula asked Myrtle. Well, I get Josie to do my other chores for me. Myrtle grinned as if she were proud of herself. Josie shook her head. She's teaching me to cook and bake. So, while she bakes in the mornings, I help her with her chores. Lula shook her head. I should have known. Why's that? Ella asked. Because Myrtle has always had a bit of a sneaky side. Don't you think? When the other women all agreed with Lula, Josie shook her head. She gives as good as she takes. But she gets to do her favorite chore. And not the others, Lula said. I would much rather darn socks than cook or bake. Before I agreed to be Myrtle's partner in the bakery, I was thinking of taking in laundry, because I enjoy cleaning. Come see my house. Ella said. Don't forget your scrub brush. Josie laughed. You always did hate when you had to clean the rooms of the guests. I did, Ella agreed. Do you blame me? What have you decided you want to do then? Josie asked. I'm going to raise rabbits. I don't think I can butcher them myself, but Lula said she'd do it. Ella shrugged. I get to play with bunnies. Lula smiled. I'm going to help Belle with the hunting. And I will butcher rabbits. Are you only raising rabbits, Ella? Maggie asked. No, I'm going to plant a large garden and take some of the burden off Sally. That sounds much more equitable, Maggie said. And when you have babies, just drop them here. Wait, Josie said. If Ella is gardening and Lula is hunting, who's going to forage? Maggie tilted her head to one side. I was thinking you would, Josie, but you can't if you're working in the bakery. We'll have to figure that out. Belle shrugged. Perhaps Lula and I can hunt in the mornings and forage in the afternoons. I did most things for myself before Maggie arrived. We'll figure it all out, Josie said. I'm sure there will be more ladies arriving this spring. Very true, Belle said. Everything will come out in the wash. Chapter 8. Josie spent her days learning to cook and bake, and her nights learning about her new husband. What shocked her more than anything was the fact that Jack didn't seem to have a temper at all. She'd never even seen him annoyed with anything, and she realized she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. By the time the snow melted, Josie and Myrtle had a real plan for the bakery, and the men began building their dream. While Myrtle worked on a menu and ordered what she would need for the bakery, Josie helped with foraging in the mornings, and she helped Sally with planting in the afternoons. It wasn't work she particularly enjoyed, but she knew it was needed. Thankfully, there was news of at least one more woman joining them in late spring, and possibly another. Once they were there, tasks would once again be shifted. It was late May when the bakery was finally built. Myrtle and Josie were able to go inside and decorate as well as put things away. They'd decided on 3 stoves for the bakery, but thankfully, Myrtle was able to move one of the stoves from her house into the new building. Josie had put the long winter months to good use as she had made tablecloths for every table and matching curtains for the windows. She'd also carefully painted a large sign to hang in front that simply read bakery. They opened within a week of the last nail being pounded in, and there was a line out the door on the Saturday morning they chose for their grand opening. Josie ran all day, filling coffee cups, bringing pie and soup, as well as bread. They planned to only be open Monday through Friday, but they wanted the men to be off work for their grand opening, and it worked well for them. When Josie finally locked the door at the end of the day, she and Myrtle collapsed into chairs at one of the tables. "I can't believe today was such a success," Myrtle said. "We both knew it would go well. With all the men who used to meet you in this exact spot to buy your baked goods, it's not surprising at all that they would be here to buy everything they could when we opened." Josie shook her head. "You could not have done this alone. Aaron was right to make you wait for a partner." Myrtle nodded. "He was. How are you feeling? Was this too much?" Josie shook her head. "My mother worked up until she went into labor with all of her children. I have 7 months to go. I don't know how I'll manage when you have to take some time off. Someone else will be here by then, and they'll take my place. Simple. You can't be replaced that easily," Myrtle said. "I think we did well money-wise," Josie said. "Is there soup left for me to take home for supper?" With as badly as her feet hurt, she really didn't want to have to cook that evening. "There isn't." They ate it all. Toward the end of the day, Myrtle had started ladling the soup into bowls to make things go faster. "I'll figure something out for Jack then," Josie rubbed her hand over her eyes. "I wish there was time for a nap, but I'm sure Jack expects supper any minute. Is there bread for sandwiches?" Myrtle shook her head. "There isn't a speck of food left." "All right." Josie got to her feet. "I'll see you at Bible study tomorrow." Thankfully, Josie had cleaned as the day progressed, so the only thing left to do was take the soiled tablecloths home to wash. When Josie got home, Jack was sitting at the table reading. "I expected you home an hour ago," he said. "I'm sorry. We were busier than we thought we'd be. We had to wait for the last table to finish eating before we could close. I'll find something for supper." Jack watched the slow way she moved. "I'm not sure I want you to keep working in the bakery. You look tired." "I am tired, but I worked just as hard at the hotel, but you came here so you wouldn't have to work at the hotel anymore." Jack got to his feet and walked to her. "You're expecting. You shouldn't be working so hard. I came here so I could start a new life. My problem with the hotel wasn't how hard I worked. I wanted to work hard for myself, not for someone else." "Still," he said. "I don't like it." "You agreed to it months ago," she said, surprising herself as she dared to argue with him. He frowned, reaching for her. Josie ducked away from him, backing all the way into the stove to get away from him. Thankfully, it wasn't on. "I'm not going to hurt you. I was just going to hold you for a minute." Jack was hurt at her reaction. Surely, she knew him well enough by now to know he wouldn't hit her. The word stuck in her throat. She closed her eyes, trying to get past the terror, but it was there, and it wouldn't go away. Jack wanted to hold her, to see the calm enter her eyes when she realized he wasn't going to get violent, but he could see that she wouldn't handle him getting that close to her. "I'm going to step outside for a bit to give you time to get calm. Don't worry about supper, we'll just have hardtack and jerky." She heard the door close behind him, and she collapsed into one of the chairs at the table, burying her face in her hands. She didn't know if she was more frightened or embarrassed. Jack wouldn't hit her. Deep down, she knew that to be true. But how could she be completely certain? When Jack came back inside a few minutes later, Josie was breathing normally again. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as he had closed the door behind him. "I know you're not like my stepfather." "No, I'm not, but it's understandable that you'd be afraid. I'm sorry to have caused that." Deep down, though, he was disappointed. They'd been married for 6 months, and he had never laid a hand on her in anger. How could she think he would hit her? Especially since she was pregnant. Did your stepfather hit your mother when she was expecting? He asked. Josie nodded. After the first time, he did. He was always afraid she'd have another girl, and he tried to beat it out of her. At least that's what he yelled while he was hitting her. I would be just as happy with a girl as I would with a boy, Jack said softly. I like the idea of a little girl who could wrap me around her little finger. She smiled. I don't think it matters if it's a boy or a girl. They'll wrap you around their little finger no matter what. Very true. Jack hugged her tightly. We're going to get past your fears. We'll do it together. I never saw you angry before tonight. Josie closed her eyes. It startled me. I know. It'll be fine. You keep working with Myrtle, and I'll trust you to know your limits. That sounds very fair. She rested her forehead against his shoulder. I'm tired of drinking spruce tea. I don't like the taste. How much longer do we have to drink it? What I've always heard is we drink it until the river runs clear, so no more ice. Are you sure it's good for me? It is supposed to prevent scurvy, which is not good for you, so yes, I'm sure. All right. Spruce tea with breakfast every day. How about muffins for breakfast in the morning? Myrtle taught me how to make them with dried berries. Sounds good to me. He kissed her softly. I'm sorry I frightened you. You did nothing wrong. I'm sorry, I was frightened. The bakery had been open for a month before Josie and Myrtle got into a good rhythm. Myrtle hid 2 desserts and 2 loaves of bread before they opened every day to make sure they each had a dessert and bread for their suppers. One morning, Myrtle was late, and Josie started the soup. It was the one thing she felt competent doing while waiting for her friend. When Myrtle arrived and saw that the huge pot was already filled with soup, she smiled. Thank you. I overslept this morning. I don't think I've ever overslept in my life. Myrtle shook her head. I'll start the bread now. Hopefully, we'll have enough food ready before we open at 11. Josie helped with the baking for the first time that morning, taking over the dessert making. Thankfully, Myrtle had planned cobbler and pie for the day. They were the only desserts Josie felt she could make, even with Myrtle right there giving advice. When they opened, there was the usual rush of men into the bakery. Josie watched as the first customer took a big bite of the soup she'd made. When he didn't spit it out and took another bite, she knew she'd done something right. When there was a short lull between customers, Josie cleaned the tables and put one more pot of soup on. They usually went through at least 4 pots per day. One would cook while another was served, and when the first was emptied, they would start a third. It worked well for them. To Josie's surprise, Katie came by for lunch that day. Katie, what can I get for you? Josie asked. I've been hearing about your delicious soup all day, so I thought I'd stop in and try some. Katie grinned. And I need a loaf of bread, of course. What desserts do you have today? We have mixed berry cobbler and blueberry pie. Any preference? Josie asked. I'll take a cobbler. Is it the kind with the sugar cookie crust? Katie asked. It's the only kind I know how to make. You made it? Well, I'm glad I'll get to try it. Believe it or not, I made the soup as well, Josie said, lowering her voice. I've never cooked here before. I do the cleaning and serving, and Myrtle does the cooking. I guess I did all right if you're hearing the soup is delicious. I'll let you know, Katie said with a smile. I'm excited to try it. Since there were no other customers, Josie got a bowl of soup and a dinner roll to have with Katie. She called back to Myrtle, who took the opportunity to eat her lunch as well. You do good business here, Katie said when they were all seated. We do, Myrtle said. Better than I ever expected. Katie took a bite of her soup. This is really good, Josie. You need to cook more often. Well, it's not as good as Myrtle would have done. Myrtle shook her head. I don't know that I would have put these ingredients together, but this soup is wonderful. Josie looked between her 2 friends. Really? Really? Myrtle said. It's good. Josie took a bite herself and smiled. It's not bad at all. When she got home that night, Josie couldn't wait to tell Jack that she'd made the soup for the bakery that day, and not only did no one get sick, people liked it. Jack laughed when she told him. Of course, they liked it. I keep telling you what a good cook you are. You just don't listen to me. I listen to you. I just think you're sweet on me, so you fib a little about things I don't feel comfortable doing. He shook his head. You don't know me at all, do you? She shrugged. We're having soup tonight. I hope you don't mind. I don't mind at all. Did you do a lot of business today? We did. And I made the soup and desserts. I kept expecting someone to hate it. She knew she was talking about how well her food went over too much, but it felt so good. It was what she needed to gain some confidence in her cooking. Sorry, I keep talking about it. I never believed I could cook or bake, and suddenly, I can. He chuckled. You were never as bad as you thought you were. I don't recall spitting out what you cooked even once. She started to throw different ingredients into a large pot to make another soup. I hope you're hungry, she said. I am. How long do you think it will be before we eat? Less than an hour, I hope. She moved quickly, and he watched, surprised at how comfortable she suddenly looked in the kitchen. Is there anyone foraging? He asked. Yes, everyone but Maggie, Myrtle, and I are foraging for an hour every day. Well, I don't think Sally is either. She has enough to do with her enormous garden. I love the Arctic raspberries, or nagunberries, that are ripe now. I hope we'll get enough for you to make me a cobbler from them. Tomorrow's Saturday. Why don't we go and forage for some ourselves? I'm happy to make a cobbler as soon as I get my hands on the berries. Josie was still excited that she could bake things that people would ask to have again. That sounds lovely. Maybe we can make a picnic of it. I'd like that a lot. Later, after they'd eaten, he reached for her hand. Do you enjoy working at the bakery now that it's been open for a while? She nodded. I do wish I could cook more, but I don't want to change things just as we're getting used to our routine. He smiled. You enjoy cooking now, don't you? Josie shrugged. I guess I do. But I enjoy it when people compliment my cooking more than I enjoy cooking. Jack chuckled. Probably because it's something you never thought would happen. Probably. Josie looked at him with wide eyes. I just remembered that there should be a pig harvest soon. I cannot wait to get my hands on some ham and some bacon. I can make ham sandwiches for your lunch. That does sound good. It took a long time. It feels like forever. I think it's happening this weekend. We may be asked to help with the process, but I sure hope not. I don't want to have to help with the butchering process. He tilted his head to one side and studied her. Why not? For the same reason I didn't want to raise bunnies. Because I don't want to think of my food as animals. Someone else can deal with that part of things. He nodded. He should have known it was her soft heart that made her feel that way. Chapter 9. As soon as breakfast was finished and the dishes were washed, Josie and Jack headed out to forage in the large meadow where they had heard there were berries. Jack walked through the meadow, a birch basket hooked over his arm. Josie followed more slowly, brushing aside last year's leaves with her fingertips. Here, she said quietly, pointing. See the red? Jack knelt beside her. Nestled close to the ground were wild strawberries, small. He smiled. You've got a better eye for them than I do. She plucked one carefully and held it out to him. Jack bit into it, his teeth brushing against her fingers, and closed his eyes for a moment. That tastes like summer, he said. Now we need to find the Arctic raspberries. They remained where they were for a few minutes, picking the strawberries until there were no more ripe. Then they moved on to search other areas of the meadow. They worked without hurry, speaking only when necessary. In a slightly higher, drier patch of ground, Josie found the first nagunberries, their pale pink skins blushing under the sun. These are early, Jack said. Early or not, they'll make a delicious cobbler. Josie was excited to find the berries Jack was eager for. If they found enough, she may even make some into jam to eat on toast later. They gathered what they could, careful not to strip any one patch bare. It took them an hour, but they finally had what Josie considered enough berries for not only a cobbler, but also a batch of jam. She'd done a lot of reading on jam making, and she was certain she was ready to try her hand at it. They carried their things down to the riverbank, where Jack spread a folded cloth, and Josie unpacked what they had brought: thick slices of bread, a small crock of butter, smoked fish wrapped in paper, and a tin cup for each of them. They ate slowly, sitting close. Josie mashed a few strawberries against the bread with the back of her knife, the juice staining her fingers pink. Afterward, they shared the berries straight from the basket. The nagunberries were soft and perfumed, almost floral, and Josie sighed as she ate one. "I'd never had this type of berries before moving here. I think they've become my favorite." Jack leaned back on his elbows, opening his mouth as she fed him one more berry. "Now that it's warmer, we should spend more time outside like this," he said. Josie nodded. She rested her head against his shoulder, the taste of berries lingering on their tongues. "This is a perfect day after the seemingly endless winter." He smiled. "I agree. Alaska's harsh climate isn't for everyone, but when you know what's waiting for you when spring finally arrives, the winters aren't so bad. Lula and Sebastian are coming over this evening. Perhaps we could eat outside," she suggested. "I'd like that. I'll build a fire." "Have you ever cooked over a campfire?" he asked. She laughed. "I can barely cook on a stove." "You know that's not true. Not after the way everyone praised your soup yesterday." Smiling as she remembered, Josie nodded. "They did praise my soup, didn't they?" She could have won 20 blue ribbons at a fair for her cooking and not have felt as much pride as she did over that simple soup. "Because you're a good cook," he said. "Maybe we should catch a few fish and cook them over the fire." "I wouldn't know how. We'll stop by Myrtle's and ask." Jack wasn't going to let her say no. "If we're going to stop by Myrtle's and ask, why don't we also stop by Agnes and Tom's place and see if they have any fresh fish for us? I know the last time I talked to Agnes she said they were getting lots of salmon in their nets." "Good idea. Then we can lie here a little longer and enjoy spring." Josie laughed. "Are you feeling lazy today?" Jack nodded. "Lazy and hopeful that you'll stay here with me." She snuggled into his side, and they lay on the picnic blanket together. It was the perfect way to spend some time after berry picking. By the time they got home, Josie had fish and a good idea of how to make it over the fire. Myrtle had convinced her to order a Dutch oven from Katie, and she'd just gotten it, but hadn't been entirely certain how to use it. Myrtle suggested she build a fire, and put the fish into the oven, setting it straight into the fire. First, she brined the salmon in a saltwater solution for 30 minutes. While it was soaking, she peeled a few potatoes and cut them up, and then did the same with carrots. She added those to the Dutch oven and then added the fish. After, she put it into the fire. She stood staring down at the oven and the fire for a few moments before she returned to the house to set out the dishes they would use. Then she and Jack carried their table out the door together, followed by them taking 4 chairs out. Josie added a tablecloth to the table to make the meal more festive. After setting the table, she stood back and looked at it, a small smile on her face. It was perfect. Now, if only the fish turned out as it was supposed to. When Lula and Sebastian arrived, Lula commented on the beautiful table. "And something smells delicious," she said, setting down the cake she'd brought for dessert and hugging Josie. "You went to a lot of trouble for us." "It was Jack's idea. He thinks we should enjoy the outdoors as much as we can before winter comes back." "I think I agree with Jack then," Lula said. "I can't wait to eat. It should be ready." Josie walked to the fire and grasped the handle of the Dutch oven with her apron covering her hand to prevent burning. She carried it to the table, where she had a cloth to set it on. She pulled the lid off and could see that everything had cooked perfectly. "I think it's done," Josie said. She served 4 plates, and they all sat down to eat. Josie didn't know Sebastian well, and she was happy to have another opportunity to get to know her friend's husband. "This is wonderful," Sebastian said. "I've never had salmon cooked quite like this." I asked Myrtle how to cook it. The woman is a genius in the kitchen, Josie said. I certainly love the bread and desserts she sends our way. Sebastian smiled. When I sent for a bride, I had no idea I'd be getting a group of women working on so many different things. You ladies really are doing a good thing here. After eating, the men carried the table and chairs back inside, and they played cards for a while. Josie had taken to inviting a different couple over every week to get to know them better. It worked well for her. When they left for the evening, Josie straightened the house and did the dishes. I think that went really well, she said. I think so too. I hadn't really taken time to get to know Sebastian before, but he seems like a good man. I'll be able to carry on conversations with him at work now. Jack walked up behind her and rubbed her shoulders. That feels nice. You had a good time? I did. I like that we're having people over. He leaned against the counter. Mr. Johnson wants us to build a church. Everett is donating the lumber, but it will take a few weekends, even with all the men who will help. Are you going to be part of it? He nodded. I think I am. I just wanted you to know, because we're planning to start building next weekend. We'll work while it's light out, and that means up to 16 hours per day. Do you mind? Josie shook her head. Of course not. We need a church. I think it's time. I agree. I never would have thought it 2 years ago. Everything started to change when Everett got married. For the good, I hope. Most definitely. Going from having one woman in town to 9 made things so much nicer. He grinned. Besides, I'm married now, and I like being married. She wrinkled her nose. You like having food cooked for you daily and someone to warm your bed. She wiped the last dish dry and put it away. That's very true. My favorite part is the bed warming. She laughed. I'm aware. Will you make the cobbler tomorrow? He asked. She nodded. Cookie dough crust or regular? Always cookie dough, he said. And you could make a little extra dough for me to eat raw. She shook her head. I will, but if it makes you sick, it's not my fault. I'll keep that in mind, he said with a grin, taking her hand and pulling her toward their bed. I'm glad we have people over every Saturday night to get to know them, but I'm always ready for them to leave. I understand. We can't take off all of our clothes when we have friends over. I think we could. It just wouldn't be a good idea. Very true, she said. The church building went up quickly, taking only 3 weekends. The women took food and drinks to the men so they could keep working. Josie was pleased to be part of the building process in some way. On their first Sunday in the new building, Josie looked around her, pleased with the work the men had done. There were no fancy stained glass windows as there would have been in a church in Massachusetts, but the building was sturdy and would serve its purpose well. That day, Mr. Johnson preached about the willing hands who had built the church and prepared the meals. His voice caught in his throat as he talked about how happy he was to have a church again. We'll still do some Bible studies before church services, but it will be wonderful to have both. And the church is big enough that we can have social suppers after church every Sunday and we can even have dances on occasion. It will be good for us as Christians, but also good for the community as a whole, so I want to give a heartfelt thanks to all who made this happen. You have changed our town forever. After the sermon, the women talked, and they divided up what they would bring the following week. I'll make some salmon, Josie offered. I'll bring bread and dessert, Myrtle said. As everyone talked about what they would bring, it occurred to Josie that she hadn't just moved to Yeti to marry. She'd become an integral part of the community in a way that she'd never imagined possible. I'll bring a radish salad, Sally offered. I'll bring some smoked salmon in addition to what Josie brings. Belle pursed her lips. I'll bring a venison roast and some potatoes. Katie smiled. I'll donate dishes and silverware to the church, so they will be here and ready to be used whenever we need them. In another corner of the building, the men were talking. I think we should make some tables that are easily disassembled for the social suppers, Sebastian said. Everett nodded. I'll donate some large pieces of wood. And we'll bring 6 sawhorses to make 3 large tables. We built the pews so we could move them, and we can use those as chairs, Jack said. By the time they left the church, everyone was ready to begin weekly social suppers at the church. Josie and Jack walked home hand in hand. I'm excited to start weekly social suppers, Josie said. It will give us a chance to come together as a community and get to know everyone. I agree. And if we could do seasonal suppers and dances, I think that would go far as well. It all sounds good to me. We all work so hard that it would be nice to have gatherings to look forward to. He nodded. What do you think the chances are that we'll have a lot more men showing up for church, simply so they can partake in the social supper after? She laughed. I think church attendance will double at least. Especially if they know that Myrtle is baking. Has the bakery slowed down at all? Or are you still busy from open to close? It really depends on the day. We're busy most of the time, but there will be temporary lulls. I like the lulls. It gives me a chance to catch up. Myrtle is talking about serving sandwiches when we have bacon and ham available, which will be any day. That will add to what I need to do. Will you make the sandwiches, or will she? Jack asked. She'll bake the bread, of course. She'll even cook the ham and bacon. But I will assemble the ingredients into a sandwich. Josie shrugged. It shouldn't be too hard. And when I get behind, Myrtle usually jumps in to help. Are you still glad you decided to partner with her? Definitely. I can't think of any other job I would rather do. Good. I hope you'll feel like you can keep doing it right up until the baby is born. Josie nodded. I hope more friends come along soon. We need people who are willing to fill whatever role is vacated when we have our babies. She shook her head. I'm glad we're expecting. I just worry about Myrtle having to handle everything on her own while I'm out with the baby. I'm sure she can handle it if she needs to. I am as well, but it would be very hard for her to do it all on her own. She probably wouldn't be able to serve food, and would only be a bakery. She likes having people come in and eat. Speaking of which, why do you never come and eat? You could eat for free. He shrugged. I feel like I should leave that for the unmarried men. You pack me a lunch every day, and I eat breakfast and supper at home. Most of the men only get to eat fresh food when they go to the bakery and have you serve them. I wish there was an easy way to send food with people, but the cost of the dishes is prohibitive. Josie decided to talk to Myrtle about it. Surely the men could take dishes and bring them back. They'd brought Myrtle pie plates when she was selling out of her bakery wagon. Chapter 10. Josie brought up the subject of making meals for people to take with them, and she and Myrtle came up with a plan. Either the men could bring their own dishes, or they could put soup in a jar, or they could wrap a sandwich in a piece of paper. They had baskets they could line with cloth as well, but they would have to charge extra for those, and the men would get some of their money back when they returned the items clean. They could even trade with a local Athabascan tribe for baskets, as the native people's baskets were far superior to any others they could get locally. With a plan in place, Josie carefully wrote on the chalkboard with the day's menu that they could accommodate taking food out of the bakery. That weekend, Jack and Josie walked to meet up with the local tribe and trade for baskets. Jack and Josie reached the river bend by mid-morning. A small Athabascan camp stood back from the bank among the spruce, summer shelters, light and open, with racks nearby where fish would hang later in the season. Jack had explained that the tribe moved around, and they had different winter homes than they used in the summer. He'd told her she should stay quiet unless she was spoken to, so as not to come across as rude to the tribe. They did not call out right away. Jack set their pack down where it could be seen, and they waited. After a moment, a man stepped forward from the trees, then a woman, both watching them with calm, assessing eyes. Jack nodded. "Morning," he said simply. The man returned the nod. A few words were exchanged. Josie stayed quiet, her hands folded, her gaze respectful. When the purpose of their visit was clear, the woman gestured toward a grouping of baskets set on a folded hide near the shelter. Josie felt a small catch in her breath. They were finer than she had expected, made of spruce root, tightly coiled. Some were shallow and wide for berries, others deeper, suited for carrying or storage. A few bore subtle patterns worked into the weave, darker roots forming quiet lines. Josie knelt to look more closely, careful not to touch without invitation. The woman crouched beside her and lifted one basket, turning it so Josie could see the rim. "Strong," the woman said. Josie nodded. "For berries," she replied, then gestured gently. "And bread." The woman smiled faintly at that. Jack opened their pack and laid out what they had brought: a large sack of flour, carefully measured, a twist of tea, several bars of soap wrapped in paper, a length of red cloth folded neatly. He set each item down and then waited. There was no haggling in the way Jack had once imagined trade to be. Instead, there was a pause while the Athabascans considered the goods, spoke quietly among themselves, and weighed usefulness against need. At last, the woman selected several baskets and set them between Jack and Josie. Jack nodded again. "That's fair." The woman inclined her head, agreement settled. The exchange was made, hands moving calmly, deliberately. Before they parted, the woman touched the shallow basket and said something else, slower this time. Josie understood enough to catch the meaning: "Don't pick everything. Leave some." Josie met her eyes. "We do," she said. "Always." That earned a second, warmer smile. They left the way they had come, without ceremony. As they walked back upriver, Josie carried some of the baskets cradled against her chest, while Jack carried several more. "They're beautiful," she said quietly. Jack glanced at her. "They'll last. Thank you for taking me to trade with them. I wouldn't have known what to do on my own. I don't want you to try going on your own. If you need more, we'll go together." "Are they violent?" He shook his head. "Not at all. They are people who rely on trade networks. I just wouldn't like you to venture that far on your own. Wildlife on the way there would be a greater risk to you. I would like to get a large basket to carry the baby in when my time is closer." She looked down at one of the baskets she carried. "They do beautiful work. We'll go back at the end of summer then. I'm sure they'll have something that will suit your tastes well." He looked at her for a moment. "Will you take the baby to work with you?" She shook her head. "Maggie is taking care of all the babies. I may try to make it so I only work half days or something because I don't want to have to leave work to nurse it. We'll see how it works out." "Do you think that will be possible?" he asked. "I really don't know. I'm hoping there will be more friends here by then, and one will be willing to work with me. I just don't know if anyone else is coming." He chuckled. "I have a feeling there will be many more coming. I think we're all glad that Everett formed a relationship with Mrs. Elizabeth Tandy. We've all benefited. Even the men who haven't married yet." She nodded. "That's true." She looked around. "I need to stop for a minute." He looked at her with concern. "Are you sick? Is it the baby?" "The baby and I are fine. I'd like to sit down for a minute or two is all." "I brought a blanket," he said, opening his pack. He spread the blanket on the ground beside the trail, and they both sat down on it. "I tire more easily. I hope you don't mind that I felt the need to stop." "Not at all. I don't want you to hurt yourself or the baby." He reached out and took her hand. "I'm very excited to become a father." She grinned. "I hadn't noticed." She struggled with her inner demons for a moment before saying, "My stepfather was very excited the first time my mother became pregnant with one of his children. He treated her like she was made of glass, but when she had a girl and not the boy he wanted, he became violent." "Are you certain you'll be happy even if the baby's a girl?" "Of course I will." Jack wished there was a way he could convince her. They'd been married for almost 9 months, and she still worried he'd suddenly turn violent. He understood it was her past and not him, but he still had trouble dealing with her worries. He wanted her to trust him completely, but that still hadn't happened. Josie was up early the following morning, building a fire to make the fish for the social supper. Jack joined her after a few minutes, yawning. "You should have picked something you could get up later to make." Josie laughed. "I don't mind early mornings." Go back to bed if you're still tired. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his cheek atop her head. How can I sleep without you in the bed next to me? She laughed, turning in his arms. The same way you slept before we met. I could never go back to being the man I was after living with you. He shook his head. I love you, Josie. With everything inside me. She stared at him for a moment with wide eyes. You do, really? He chuckled. Of course I do. You've made my life infinitely better in so many ways. I love you too, she whispered. You love me? Does that mean you trust me? Of course, I trust you. I sleep in a bed with you every night, and I couldn't do that if I didn't trust you. Then you trust I'll never deliberately hurt you? She bit her lip and finally nodded. I do. You don't seem certain. I'm certain, she said. And suddenly she realized she was. He had only ever treated her with kindness and caring. How could she be worried he would hurt her? He leaned down and kissed her softly. I didn't think you'd ever be able to trust me. He wanted to shout and do a dance. Everything he'd wanted and needed stood in the circle of his arms. Epilogue. Months later, Josie held her little girl in her arms for the first time. They'd decided to name her Eleanor and call her Ellie. The feeling of true joy that washed over her surprised her. She wasn't even a bit frightened that Jack would be upset with her when he realized she'd had a girl, a beautiful, perfect little girl with a tuft of dark hair sticking up. When Jack joined her, he sat down beside her on the bed, looking to see if she was all right. How are you feeling? He asked. Sore. But it was worth it. Isn't she beautiful? A girl? His face lit up at the idea. I have a daughter? Yes, and you'll spoil her rotten. There's no doubt in my mind. Our little Ellie. We should have named her Princess, because she'll be treated like one. Josie laughed. But then she'd be made fun of. We can't do that to her. You're right. I love her already. He stroked the baby's cheek with the back of his forefinger. Thank you for my daughter.